Hi, my name is Robin Fowler, and this is my group leading report for HSCO 511 Group Dynamics. For my group project, I led a group discussing the book and using some of the techniques in this book by James C. Peterson called Why Don't We Listen Better? The history of this group, it started 5 years ago. I started the group as a ongoing education discussion group for the purpose of discipleship. It was originally a closed group with 5 members. In the past year, we have shifted our focus. We no longer are a closed group. We're an open group. We meet weekly, and we don't have a specific topic. We discuss whatever issues that we're currently dealing with, if there's anything specific that somebody wants to discuss. So it's a more informal format. For the purpose of this group, I did announce that I would be leading this particular topic. The night participation in the group is all voluntary. And the night that I led the group, we had 9 other people plus myself present. In the beginning phases of the session, I introduced the book and discussed some of the techniques in the book and explained why I wanted to lead this group and the benefits I felt of using this. In the middle phase of the group, I went into more detail on these talker and listener cards that Peterson has, and we talked about the different roles when you're the talker versus the listener. We also had a handout from Peterson's website on techniques to use as the listener, techniques you can use when you're the listener. And so then I introduced the concept of us playing a game. We played a game in the round, so each person had an opportunity to discuss whatever they would like to talk about whatever they wanted to within the group. I did tell them I would limit them to 5 minutes. I didn't have to limit anybody. Everybody stayed under the 5-minute time limit. As they were the talker, they would have their card facing them as the talker, and it just reminds them of what they need to be focused on. So then everybody else would be the listener. The job of the listeners were, after the talker had finished, was to then communicate back with the talker using these different listening techniques on the handout. I had, at the beginning, asked that at least 2 people use 2 different techniques after every talker. The group really didn't need that direction. As we went through this, they all would use different techniques depending on what the talker had discussed. So they were very effective in performing this task. We closed by discussing why some of the techniques were more comfortable and how it felt to be both the talker and the listener, and why these techniques could be used in other situations to help us be more effective listeners. This particular group is in the performing stages of development, and we have a high goal of achievement. The group also has a high level of therapeutic forces and curative factors. Of the 11 therapeutic factors mentioned in Jacobs et al., I would estimate that this group shows 7 to 8 of those factors on a regular basis. The dynamics of the group that particular night were active and engaged. Each member took a turn being the talker. The members all took turns responding with different listening techniques. They did not have to be prompted. It wasn't that they were all using the same technique. They didn't have to be prompted with that. They all took advantage of that and did a very good job with that. The group dynamics are high, and I think that part of the reason that this worked so well with this group is that they do have a high level of social cohesion, and that seemed to facilitate a very lively discussion as we would go through these and they would use the different techniques. The leadership techniques I used in leading this group was, to begin with, the game itself is played in a round. I also used the round to help process the information at the end of the group so that everybody had a chance to share what they found difficult, what they thought was the most helpful. The talker-listener game itself uses several leadership techniques like active listening, clarification, summarizing, and reflection. I personally use the skill of modeling when I would see that one technique was being used, or maybe 1 or 2 techniques was being used more and some others were not being used as much. Then I would model the other techniques so that then we would see that how other techniques could be used, so that we didn't kind of fall into the rut of using the same one for every talker. There were two different times in the groups where the game shifted. A listener would take over talking. And so during those two times, I actually used redirection so that we were keeping our focus on the talkers talking and you're listening. Don't forget what your job is in this. I used my eyes to make sure that I was connecting with different group members so that it wasn't always the same group member leading the talking techniques, the listening techniques, so that there were different group members were taking the beginning and active role in that. Overall, I felt like the group was very successful. The members were active, they were all engaged. There were some things, though, that I would like to change. First, this material was a lot of material to cover in an hour and a half, and I actually think that this would be a great communication book to use in a group over several sessions, 3 or 4 sessions. In my proposal, I had also mentioned using an icebreaker, which was my plan, but when I arrived at the group that night, it was my birthday, and they had actually surprised me with a birthday cake. And that kind of threw me off my plan, and I forgot to use my icebreaker. So in the future, when I'm leading groups, I want to make sure that I have even just a rough outline, just so that I don't forget those things that I really would have liked to have done, because I think it would have been helpful. I don't think it was detrimental for not to use the icebreaker, but I think it would have been helpful. So I did enjoy leading the group. I felt like that between leading this group and observing the support groups that I've observed, I've come to the conclusion that I'm really more comfortable in groups that I'm leading where they're all female. There are some specific skills I would like to practice, and that would include, I want to make sure that I'm setting the tone and maintaining the focus of the group. I'm very comfortable leading from a lecture or teaching role, and I want to practice leading a group where there's more active participation in the group and that the group members are actually engaging with the material. The last skill I would like to develop is the use of silence in group. In one of the support groups I attended, the leader was particularly effective at using silence to allow group members to process and then have different group members share. And I want to really practice that skill because I think it's a helpful skill in certain situations. All in all, by leading this group, I think that between the techniques in group counseling, the Jacobs book, and the Peterson book, the listening techniques, I think it's going to make me a more effective group leader, and I'm looking forward to leading more groups in the future. Thank you.